Hello everyone, it's Bob at Vintage Lambo. So let's go ahead and take a look at this distributor part 3, and hopefully you'll see that I'm trying to examine what has happened over the years with these parts, and perhaps we can try and make it a little bit better. I mean, that's the quest. So let's see what we can come up with. All right, let's see. What are we going to make today? And let's start off with this pin we're going to make. Now, of course, this is in good shape, but two of them are looking like this. And so let me just zoom in if I can without screwing up too badly. So you can see it's just really in bad shape. The follower, you can see how much slop is in here. So we want to eliminate the slop by making a new pin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this stock piece of metal here, and we're going to turn it into this. Okay. How is this held in? This has a bit of a press in, and then on the back side, you see where it's inside a little bit? So this is actually pressed in, so this swedges out, and that's how the permanent hold is. So we're gonna replicate that. Okay, so now let's talk about a few other things. We want to make 3 parts. So we're gonna try and make this housing for the spring, and this also rides inside that bronze bushing we just put in, and I don't want to mess up the bronze bushing. If you see how it's grooved in here, how those grooves were created, not quite sure, but we have a spring that's inside here, and perhaps this got a bit weakened by that. I'm not sure. Dirt, who knows? But we need to see if we can machine a new one. All right, so now let's talk about the pin. And the pin is pretty important. First of all, I know I'm hoping I'm getting this into the camera angle, but do you see the flat spot? So this flat spot was occurring because it goes ahead and it's going to hit this drum. And I say hit, I'll get to that in a little bit. But essentially, this is in the spring, and let me just sort of put it together to try and give an idea. All right, so let's use this pin, and you can see it's in fairly good shape. It's just the spring inside here has put some grooves on it. So let's put that in like this. Whoops, let's not do that. Let's do this first. Put this in. And then we're going to put it inside the weight. Now you see the small hole here? This pin can then go inside the little groove, and then that can give it a little bit of support. But as you can see right here, it's really not supporting it too well. It's barely in there. So when we put this into the drum, and of course I'm trying to get this so you can see it, we have the limiter so that this, when it's at idle, this is the position. This is touching the drum, and so I'm just trying to say there's some pins that are a little bit better than the others, and let's find out why. So right now this is held in place. So when this guy is on, hopefully not at the best angle here to do this. Let's figure this thing out. All right, now we have it in there. Now, because this is set up with the long spring, this locks this in place. It doesn't want to move, okay? Now, even with this setup, I can make this pin a little bit longer and still not interfere with the stop. So again, this is at idle, nothing's moving, it's locked into place. And then as with centrifugal force, this gets pushed out, and when that pushes out, then this wants to rotate, and that's your mechanical advance. So let me just get it back out a little bit, because doing this, everything will be out of the picture. Take that piece off, get this guy out. All right, so that's the long spring. So now let's put in the shorter spring. And we'll put this shorter spring, and we'll put this baby in here. We'll just use this as an example. And now these pins are the same length. So now when I go and I put this in, and I have it set at the idle. Now remember, this weight on this side with the long spring is holding this taunt onto the stop. Now, if you can see, this weight can freely move up a bit. So what can occur, or what is occurring, and this is just what I'm thinking. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do things. There's a lot of people who have good ideas. I'm just talking, okay? So now when this is up here, now remember, this is being held because of this weight, but nothing is holding the pin. So let me zoom in here real quick. I'm not a photographer, okay? So, but let's go ahead and give it a little more light. Hopefully that gives a little bit more light. Okay, and if we can zoom in on this. See how that moves to the side? See how this moved to the side? Because this pin is out, there really isn't a lot of support down here for the pin. And as I said previously, we can actually add a little bit more length onto the pin so that we can support it in here. So if this was a bit less, then I would have less problems with movement. See, this is more stable, although it's not perfect, and I'll talk about that in a second. Okay, so right there, this is going to fly out, this is going to stay the same, and we're going to have a problem with support back here. And we want this supported all the time, even if this is flying out and this weight is over here. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to take this out. Okay, so when this comes out a bit, there's very little support right inside there. And I can actually flop this a little bit. Now, what I'd like to do is, one, I'm going to give this the maximum length I can so it doesn't interfere with this stop, and that we can give it a little more support inside here. Now, the diameter of this hole is a bit more than this. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to increase the thickness of this pin and the length. The head, I'm going to machine it just like the factory. Now, if you look at this, and this is the pin for the short spring, and let me just zoom in on it again. You'll see that it's quite grooved up, because in that state where there's not much support, this is allowing it to flop back and forth like this. And in doing so, you're just adding more unnecessary chances of wear. So we want to kind of eliminate that. So by making this a little bit thicker, then the chance of this bouncing around is less. By making it thicker and longer, when it goes into this, see how this is really floppy. So we're going to try and get everything to tighten up a bit, so that when this is in operation, we're not going to have any unnecessary movement that's going to cause wear. So those are the 3 things that we're going to try and do. This is going to be quite challenging, and I'm going to be tightening up on the hole size because this is oblong also. And I'm going to see if I can add a little more thickness in here without any spring binding. So those are the things that I'm going to be doing today. All right, so we'll find out. Let's find out. Okay, I'm using the mini little boring tool to get this cap bored out. Let me just show you a little bit inside there. All right, so you can see it's a very small boring bar, and I just am going very, very slow, and then I'm also using the spring to check for clearance because I want to try and make this cap a little bit thicker than the factory. Okay, check in a little later. Okay, Bob Vintage Lambo, let's get into this. Right now, I'm now cutting these little guys here, and so I'm going to make the length a little bit longer, but you can see I need to really support this. So what I did is I put a very small little center on that, and then as far as cutting it with the center cutter, and then I can run my center on there and then give this some support as I'm cutting across. So I just, since this is the full thickness, I was able to go down in here without distorting. But as I go down here, this baby's going to want to bend. So now I'm going to get my support right there. As far as the cups, made the cup here. It's slightly thicker. I have to make sure that I don't have any spring binding, so I can make it a little bit thicker inside here, but not much. We're talking in a few thousandths, but you know, it's a little bit more is good. And you can see, of course, there's absolutely no scarring on here like the old one, so this is not going to act like sandpaper like the old one. Okay, so we'll get back to it. Talk to you later. Okay, just a little tip. Not that I can tell anyone anything, but if you take a look, I put on a extension piece here because if I brought this out to get the cutter clearance, I would have put stress on this. So when I take it out, you'll see that I had this on so I could cut the curve on that. So anyway, there you have it. There's a little guy. All right, let's see if we can make sense out of all this mess. Okay, we're back, and so let's see what we've done here. You know, these collars that were pretty grooved up. We have a new collar right here, so this is free of that. It's a hair thicker. I could only make it a hair, but it's there. The hole now in here is uniform, and so now we have a pin, a new pin, and here's the old one. So you can see that we've gone a little bit longer on the pin. I have a slight taper on here and round it over a little bit. So it's thicker, as you can see, but it's still, the springs fit in nicely without, when I compress it, it doesn't bind. So let's get on with it. All right, let's put this guy in here, and we'll put the long spring in this time. And then we'll put it inside here. Okay. So now we're going to put this into the drum. Now remember, this is our stop. And we want to make sure that this pin isn't too long. You see, when it goes down, the pin comes out. Can we see that? But when it's at the stop, it retracts, so there's no interference with the stop and the pin. But we have a little more pin in there so that we can have a little more stability. Okay, so that seems pretty good. So let's take this out. Also, it felt smoother. All right, so now let's go and put the short spring in. Okay, so we're going to act as if it's the other side. Doesn't really matter on the drum. Okay, so now you see when it's down here, the pin is loose, but you can see that it's already raised up some. So when it's down, this is pretty much, let's zoom that in. This is pretty much up here to touch, but of course it's loose here, and that's the way it should be because it's a shorter spring, but we're not going to have the flopping around. So you can see that the pin is showing. Let me make sure everything's set here and you can see it. I don't know if I have this right, but you can see how the pin sits, but when it's down on the idle, the pin is clear of the stop. But also, you see how this is up here? So now we don't have this to rattle around. So let me see if I can find something. Let me get another toothpick here for demo purposes. Sorry, I just came from the milling machine, so I was very enthusiastic about getting here, so I'm a little bit grimy. So now, let's see if we can get this in here. And if I go like this, very little movement. You know, I would just say from this weight that it's a little bit worn on the inside here where this is in, that's where you're getting some of your movement. But as far as support, you're getting support here, and also it's not going to be jumping around up here. Before it would jump around and then it can get caught down here trying to work. So now it works really good. You can see how the pin comes through over there. So anyway, pretty happy with this. I think it's going to be a good one. Trying to do a little bit more on these. You know, after 50 years, you can kind of see what you might be able to do to improve things. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm not reinventing the wheel, that's for sure. Okay, so we're going to end it here. I'll do the other pin that goes right here on the weights, and I'll do that tomorrow. Okay, see you now. Oh, be sure to subscribe.